So, I'm here going to talk to you about Dungeons and Dragons and leadership. Okay, so what in the world is Dungeons and Dragons? Who knows? Wow, we got a lot of nerds. So we're going to go have a party later. So I really don't have to explain that very much, but it's a cooperative game. It's a role-playing game. It has lots of epic adventures and a lot of camaraderie. Sound familiar to something else? Maybe your team, hopefully? So I'm going to tell you about some things that I've learned from being a dungeon master, and then when I transitioned into an actual more full-time leadership role, how the two of those actually correlated. Kind of creepy how much they did. Pretty much absolutely everything. So these are the, does anybody watch roleplay on Twitch? Okay, good. So we're not that nerdy of Dungeons and Dragons nerds. All right, so this guy in the front is Matt. He's the one who created Dungeons and Dragons years ago. Actually, I think that's the new one. Anyway, so the first thing I want to talk about with Dungeons and Dragons versus leading a team is preparation. So being a DM involves a lot of preparation and research, planning for the unexpected, understanding the goal of your adventure, all of that kind of stuff in there. Understanding your own personal character. So, you know, everybody has their own character. They all have different classes and they have different traits. And how will all of that work together? How are they going to interact with each other? And planning out, you know, what that's going to do there. You're also going to be planning out, you know, what are their goals, what are the team's goals, and what does the work entail. I think I didn't set up my presenter display very well, but oh well. And so this goes into, you know, when we actually start to go on an adventure, the dungeon master has to actually plan out your adventure, where you're going to go. You know, you find yourself, you've woken up out of a dark stupor in the middle of an inn, and all of a sudden a troll bursts in. What do you do? What are you going to do? Brett, what are you going to do? Roll for initiative. And so a lot of this is very related to how you have to prepare for your job on an everyday basis. You need to be reading your SOWs. You need to be looking into your active leadership and your training. And you need to be going through, you know, what's the work that's coming up? What is the work they have to be doing? And actually preparing your team for the stuff that they're going to have to do and guide them through it. But what possibly could go wrong? Almost everything. As a leader, hopefully you've been around for a little bit. You know a little bit about what's actually going to happen. You know some of the tricks of the trade of things that are going to go down and go wrong. And you can help plan for them and try and mitigate them in a little bit. But ultimately, you will still have to have a little bit of freedom and autonomy to work them all out. All of these backgrounds are just pictures from the artwork of D&D. So in D&D, your adventures may end up spending an hour shopping at a local inn. That's happened several times with my groups. It's a weird thing for them to do, but oh well. And you don't immediately find that it's a very productive use of time. Despite all the warnings that you gave them, sometimes you got to throw in a little bit of spark and they get attacked. In our lovely little world, this can relate to avoiding the micromanaging. So that's the adventure that they want to go on. They want to spend an hour shopping in the inn. As long as, you know, the whole team is with that, you know, why not let it happen? But encourage them a little bit and coach them along the way to make a few mistakes out of that. That's where, you know, as a DM, I'll be like, okay, well, now a troll's going to burst in because you guys really should get doing something else. And it's kind of the same thing as like your team's spending a lot of time on Facebook. Well, maybe I need to drop a new project on you. We'll give them a little bit of time. And once again, planning for the unexpected. And then another thing with D&D is we have a lot of characters who do various different things. They all have their own little bit of domain knowledge. That knowledge in the realm of D&D is allowed to be shared. Sometimes people don't share it, though, not of their own will. And so you need to encourage people to actually cross-train across your team. Sorry, there's a really squeaky thing over here. I'm going to just go. like this. And so cross-train and knowledge share across your team. So if one of your staff is sick one day, and they're the only one that knows React, and you've got something that needs to be fixed on production, what are you gonna do? So D&D has taught me, we need to cross-train to make sure that at least there's someone to do a little bit of everything. Another thing that can happen is there can be times where D&D gets really boring. So you have to spend 3 days and 3 nights in the forest traveling to Waterdeep. Anybody know where Waterdeep is? See, we're getting further down that rabbit hole. And you could simply, as a DM, you could simply say everything went smoothly, and you have now arrived at Waterdeep 3 days later. Does that sound like a really fun experience if you're playing a game? You have to travel. You've traveled. Congratulations. So instead, we're just like, oh, okay, well, let's actually keep you engaged and be like, okay, so who's going to keep watch overnight? What happens when you get watch overnight? A horde of goblins attacks. What do you do? Do you wake up everybody else, or do you just go at it yourself and fix the problem? Did you hotfix production, or did you ask the team for help? Who knows what the outcome might have been of that? So I didn't put these in very good order at all, despite them being in a build order. Yeah, none of that makes sense. Anyways, allow your team to learn something new. You've already heard that. Encourage participation in company events. This is something that I think really is going to help you build culture. And from the D&D world, this is all about encouraging them to continue to participate. So if you find someone that's kind of getting a little bit bored and stuff, what is going to make them happy for the game? Because ultimately they want to be here and they want to be happy. Same with at work. They want to be there every day. They want to stay happy. But if they're getting disengaged, how do we re-engage them? Things like hosting a hackathon, balancing out maintenance work versus new work. So you might be stuck in a maintenance rut for a while. Maybe it's time to switch them to a new project. And then we already heard from Kevin about the retrospectives and encouraging feedback. That's something I kind of threw in there because me as a new DM and a new team leader, I want to know how I'm doing in both of those aspects. Are you enjoying the game? Are you enjoying work? And you also need to help start and set expectations for what's needed to evolve their character and what's needed to evolve their career. So your characters are pretty standard. You beat these monsters, you get hit points and experience points, and eventually you level up. If only life were so easy. Adulting is hard. You get 10 experience points. What does it mean? Nothing. You just get 10 experience points. And so for me, this is all about that actually, the training plans for them. What are their goals? What's someone going to want to do in the future? And sometimes that future might not involve my company, but I'm still there to coach and mentor them and help them get to where they want to be. So leveling up is also something you really got in to get in there. I really just like looking at these really big wallpapers on this giant screen. It's a priority. So let's talk about team dynamics. So in D&D, each character has a set alignment: chaotic neutral, evil, lawful good, etc. These can also correspond to your team members' personality traits. So you might have someone who is very to the book and strict and process-oriented. You might have someone who's a little bit more loosey-goosey. Maybe wears that cowboy hat and hot fixes production. And the two of them exist on the same team. And, you got to manage that. And at times there may be disagreements in how to move forward because one person wants to do it one way, one person wants to do it another way. Who's had their developers, especially senior developers, get into arguments over code style? Okay, let's do a quick poll. Tabs or spaces? Be like, everything is left aligned. And so not all conflicts can be resolved. Sometimes we do have to say that simply there are personality differences, and that's something that can be very hard for you to do as a leader is to identify when you just probably aren't going to get along with someone, or other people on your team aren't going to get along with specific people. And so how do you plan on mitigating that? But for the most part, as humans, we can figure it out. And so I always say encourage conflict resolution to be between the people that it's between. If you're in a large company culture, sometimes people will just immediately go over your head and talk to your boss. Sometimes people will be just very passive aggressive. Or sometimes they'll completely disengage. And I always encourage people, if there's a conflict, we have to come to a resolution together. I've put myself into a lot of conflicts before, and it takes me a little bit even just to go, hey, we gotta figure this out between us, because we gotta see each other every day. Like if you got into a fight with your significant other, they have that saying, don't go to bed angry. Don't go to work angry either. Don't leave work angry. Figure it out a little bit. A good key way to do that is to seek to understand the other party before having them understand you. So what are their motivations? What is it that they want to do? In D&D, one of my older groups, one of the characters was a thief. And so we would go and we'd fight in the battle all together, and then all of a sudden he scurries off and steals all of the treasure. And they're like, that makes the whole team feel like, ugh, why are you doing that? And we say, it's like, okay, well, his character is the thief. That is what he's playing. That's what he's supposed to be doing. How do we bring this back? Someone might be having a really bad day. You don't know what their family situation might be. Someone may have passed away and they're kind of lashing out and being angry, or they're extremely depressed. Make sure you know what tools that you have in order to help facilitate those things. That's a completely new section. And so there's also been a lot of times where the team is unaware of where they should go or where they should be heading. And so D&D, you are at a crossroads, quite literally. There's a fork in the road. Left says a little sign that says clear passage, written in blood. On the other side says to Baldur's Gate. Where do you want to go? Clear path. Okay, so we're going to go to Baldur's Gate. We get halfway to Baldur's Gate. Turns out we get ambushed by a bunch of trolls. Still. You tried to avoid the conflict, but hey, it happened anyways. At this time, it's like, okay, are we on the right path? Should we keep going this way? Should we turn back? Should we go again and go a different way? And my message is just like, it's okay to go a different way. It's okay to turn back. As the DM and as the leader, I believe your role is more of support. You're there to, the decision your team makes as a team is to help guide them along the way, as long as, of course, you're meeting all of the overlords' commands of like, you still got to complete the campaign, and you still got to get the work done and get paid. But everything in between there, let's be flexible and, flow away and go through there. Oh, it says there's one more. Oh, and just in general, when Corey talked about training plans as active leadership, one thing that I have found with that is that, if you're in a busy environment, sometimes it can be difficult to get time away to come to an event like this. You luckily all was able to get time away and come by. Sometimes it's not as easy, but it's important to communicate, why those things are important, not just to your team, but to the other powers that be. Ensure into them, why training is important, why you need to go buy this new $600 piece of software of IntelliJ for everyone's computer. It's expensive. But instill, why do we actually need that? And a lot of that comes with communicating outside of the realm. That doesn't have any parallel to D&D because it's literally this little sandbox. But I thought I'd throw that in there. Ooh, scary. Wait for it. The shit umbrella. Who's heard of the shit umbrella? Awesome. So, as a DM, you know how the story goes. You know where the secret entrance is, and you know a storm giant is going to react to a human trying to talk to it. And you have access to so much information that it's important to be careful what it is you actually share and when you share it. This is very much the same in the corporate world. Sometimes you're privy to information that you probably shouldn't share, especially if it's in regards to people's performance or what's going on behind the scenes in the company or particular office politics that might be happening. Let me just open all those first. You need to be careful about what it is that you actually share with them. You need to protect your team a little bit from the shit storm that might be happening outside. But, so you've got the little umbrella over there, and you're just taking all the shit, and then there's this little thing. And everyone seen that cartoon? I'm just going to say shit 6 more times. So don't share everything about them. Take any feedback that you do get, massage it a little bit, figure out what's the best way that you can present it to them so that they're not going to collapse on you. They're not going to implode and be like, I got negative feedback that came from an external source. Oh, God. Always kind of translate the way you can do it. I had mentioned earlier that I communicate with my team every day. I also sit with them. And I think that's really important. And so as a DM, you are also with the team. You're there. You're readily available. Someone can talk to you in private. They can slip you a note. You can talk to them in private. You can slip them a note. Modern day, we just use Slack. Anybody pass notes in class as a kid? Isn't it great if we had Slack or text messaging? And so that really helps kind of give them the trust that you are there for them, that you are available, and you can help them through whatever storm may happen, like this giant beholder, which is extremely difficult to beat, attacking you. And I think there's like a lightning thingy in the background of I think that's like a big giant. I just love all the artwork in D&D. And then finally, specifically when you give praise, it's not good enough to just say, you're doing a great job. People have tend to brush that off. I try and make my praise very specific. So one of my staff had to speak to a client, and I praised them on how well presented they were and how well worded their emails were. That's a very specific piece of praise to give them, and it encourages them to keep growing, versus, you did a good job today. Well, what did I actually do a good job on? What am I good at? What do I need to work on? So be specific with your praise. Also, hand it out often. If you see something good that's happening, there's no reason not to say it. If you see something bad that's happening, there's definitely no reason not to correct it. Another key part in D&D and in the real world is time. So in D&D, we often lose track of time. We may have been in this dungeon fighting these bugbears for over 2 hours. The same happens with code. When we're trying to debug a problem, who has spent more time looking at a problem than probably asking a question? Yeah, you all done it. I have this happen on my team too. There are people that I need to say, you know what? I want you to learn. Spend 2 hours on it. If you don't get out of there at that point, come ask for help. And that has helped them learn to ask for help more often. Like Anya said earlier in the panel, it's not a bad thing to ask for help. It's actually more productive and more cost-effective if you have to bug the senior developer for a 5-minute question than for you to spend 6 hours trying to debug the problem. And that can become unproductive, and they might feel like they can't contribute. We don't want that to happen. Also, teach your team to speak up and ask to take things offline in meetings. How many people love meetings? Exactly. How many people have been stuck in a meeting that's going on forever and they have no idea why they're there? Everyone. It's okay to interrupt at that point and say, am I needed here? Or if someone's on a tangent, especially in a scrum, let's take this offline. It's not the correct avenue to discuss the incredible implementation aspects of the back-end software with all the front ends in the room. You just need to be able to speak up about that, and a lot of people are afraid to do that. I think it might be because we're Canadian. I've not seen this so much with my American developer friends. They're a little bit more ruthless about it. We're a little bit more polite, and they're just like, can we take this online? Yeah, time. So the part I've missed was tracking your time effectively. So as a DM, there has been many times where we have spent 3 hours and got through like one building in a small village instead of what was supposed to have been 3 hours to pillage the whole village. Yeah, that rhymes. So you have to be cognizant of your time, and you need to teach people to be able to keep track of their time. Like we can, especially when we're coding, we can get really involved in the code. So maybe something like Toggle, which is a really cool time management tool for your browser, where you just click start and stop, so that they keep track of their time, so they know how long things are taking. What this is going to do is help you estimate a lot better, because estimates are from Uranus. As Nail, was that Nail? I think that said that. And then know when it's time to move on. And so I realized afterwards that sounds like firing someone. What I mean is moving on from the task. Sometimes you get completely stuck and you just need to come back to it later. So you might be on a little subplot with your D&D quest, and it's like, it's not really going anywhere, and it really was just a subplot. Let's get back to, the main subject at hand. 2 minutes left on my little clock that I set. This is my reclap slide. So, major keys, because DJ Khaled, but I didn't put in the emoji because I couldn't figure out how. I swear, sometimes I'm a complete noob with my computer. All of this comes down to being empathetic, understanding what are your team's needs, what is your character's needs, understanding what makes people tick, how you can fix it, and listening, especially a lot of listening. There's this thing that my therapist taught me a while ago, which was called Wise Mind. Has anybody heard of it before? So Wise Mind is this Venn diagram. We all know how those work. And on one side, it's emotional decision-making, and on the other side, it's intellectual decision-making, so data-based, feelings-based. Wise Mind is the intersection of both of them. We don't want to be making decisions solely based on data, because that can completely ignore the fact that there's people behind that. And we don't want to be making decisions solely based on feeling, because I think the button should be blue doesn't mean that it actually should be blue. Maybe green does work better. A/B testing, getting your data. But at the same time, I love blue. Data says love green. Can we compromise? Does a purple button work? Let's test it out. So practicing Wise Mind will really help you a lot. Take a step back, understand what people are feeling, what you're feeling, understand the data that's behind it, and combine the two to come to an educated decision. Never stop learning. We've heard that numerous times today, so I won't dwell on that one. I mentioned understand before trying to be understood. Be present, so be with your team, be available, be there. Nobody likes a dungeon master who's on their phone behind the DM screen all the time while the people are just shopping in the inn. Try and interact with people. Try and be positive, be a good role model, be there for them. Provide freedom and backup. Allow your team to experiment, allow them to make mistakes, allow them to shop at that inn for an hour and then throw a troll at them. And then when they do screw up, be there for them. I kind of akin this to being like, I'm not an adult parent, but I think this is what like adult parents do, is that, you're off on your own now, but I'm here if you really need me. And then don't forget to drink at the local inn, which is exactly what it says in both worlds. Don't forget to go and have some fun. Questions?